All right, good evening and welcome to the April 13th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, what can be seen and heard in your background. The chair acknowledges the attendance and continued support of our entire staff, Jen, Alyssa, Liz, Mark, Amy, and Kristen. And we are missing one commissioner tonight. Therefore, the appointed alternate is, wait for it, Pat. And just a reminder, commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time so we can refrain from speaking over each other. Also, that all votes have to be done by roll call. When I call your name, state your name and your vote, even if you made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. Also, Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022 regarding COVID-19 allows for full public participation. Therefore, if you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I will call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. And for those of you waiting for a particular hearing, and so you don't wait unnecessarily, the following hearings will be requesting a continuance. Number 70, Kerry Lane, and 57, Moonpenny. All right. First up, vote minutes, March 30, 2022. Anybody?
Chairman, I've reviewed the minutes and I'd make a motion to approve pending any comments this evening.
Bird, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Right, Betsy.
Clodfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes. Thank you, Kristen. Next up, request for continuance under a notice of intent. Donna Haber-Kornberg, trustee, Donna Haber-Kornberg, 2021 Revocable Living Trust, 70 Berry Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a pool with pool deck and fence to conduct invasive species removal and to install restoration plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant requests a continuance until April 27th.
So moved.
Clodfelter, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 4/27. Betsy.
Clodfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until 4/27. Next up, request for determination of applicability. First up, James M. Perry, 185 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove the existing cesspools and to upgrade the subsurface sewage disposal system with new components and pipe. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. Yes, staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Clodfelter, second.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
and I,
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Clifford and Hope O'Connell, 124 Gardner Road, Woods Hole, Mass. For permission to upgrade the existing leaching pit to meet Title V standards. Ms. Bergeron,
Staff recommends a -1 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Harris, second.
all right. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
and I,
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Rotary Club of Falmouth along the eastern side of Shiverick's Pond, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a 5-foot by 4-foot educational kiosk at the southeast corner of Shiverick's Pond and to install 10 QR posts along the eastern side of the pond. Ms. Bergeron,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move. And
Harris,
where's the
second.
QR post, by the way?
Thank you.
It's, so the post is gonna have a little picture on it, and if you download the app, it will scan that picture, and then on their phone, it's more of an educational tool, so like a
Oh, it's got a QR code
will
on
pop up and tell a story about it, so, yeah.
it. Cool.
Cool.
all right. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
and I,
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, requests for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, commenting is limited to 3 minutes. I encourage anyone to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, Karen Alcott, Small Cottage Nominee, Realty Trust, 141 Fay Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE and reconstruct a single-family dwelling, to install a new Title V septic system, and to install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Oh, Tom Bunker made it on. He's having some problems getting on to Zoom. So I'm promoting Tom Bunker up, as well as the property owner, Miss Alcott. Okay, Miss Alcott is here. Where's Tom? And Tom disappeared. Nope, here's Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi. I hope it'll work. My computer seems quite slow tonight. So are we ready?
We are ready
You're
for
up,
you.
sir.
We're ready. Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design, representing Karen Olcott, who is the property owner, and she is here elevated to as a panelist also. I will, if I may, I'll share my screen and
Yes,
start
sir.
right in. Okay. This job was before you 2 years ago when they first were granted an order of conditions to tear down the existing house and rebuild it. You may remember about a month ago, we presented the same plan as an amended order of conditions, but it wasn't taken that way. So we are back as a new notice of intent. So I'll start off with the it's kind of slow. We have this existing property. I've colored in the resource area boundaries and their buffer zones A and B. The property is bounded on the inland side by Fay Road, about 90 some feet wide and about 300 feet deep down to Vineyard Sound. We have the land under the ocean, land subject to tidal action. And there's a nice sandy beach, a coastal beach in this location here. Inland from the beach, there's a coastal dune. And there's an old, small stone wall across the landward edge of the coastal dune. And then landward still is a lawn area, another small retaining wall and a wooden steps and a platform. Then moving up the hill, up the slope, there's the existing house back in this location. In this location, Vineyard Sound and the beach is in flood zone VE elevation 15 at this location here. And then the 25-foot Falmouth velocity zone is in this location here. And so we have an area, well, I'll go back, the A zones, starting this way with the land subject to tidal action, 50-foot zone A, coastal beach, 50-foot zone A, land subject to tidal action, 100-foot zone B, coastal dune zone A, that's a coastal beach zone B. You get the picture. There's lots of the A and B zones. We get back to the coastal dune zone B, it's 100 feet back. This area being in a flood zone, part of this down at the bottom is in the Falmouth velocity zone is steeper than 10 to 1. In some areas down here, steeper than 10 to 1. Then the Falmouth velocity zone cutting across here, much of this area is steeper than 4 to 1. We've delineated this coastal bank is running along this orange line up the hill and then across. It levels off before it gets up or as it gets up onto the other property. And this area back here is less steep than 4 to 1. Then we have the 50-foot zone A for a coastal bank in a velocity zone through here, and then the 100-foot zone B, right, of the coastal bank, covering most all of the rest of the lot, except for a small corner. The proposal, which we had before you a month or so ago, is the same with some minor changes, but we have this proposed house in this location here. The existing house is outlined in gray, you see the existing deck is right through here, and there's deck up in this location. The main house is right here. There's no garage on the existing house, and we have added a garage in this location. So you see on this side toward the coastal bank, where actually the proposed house is further back from the coastal bank than the existing house and deck in here. And where it does get closer to the Vineyard Sound is on this side, where the coastal bank is more down in this location at the bottom of the hill. I go back here, I can show you we identified as the closest point of the house and deck to the coastal bank right here. It's 5 feet, 11 feet in this location. And then there are some stone steps coming down, existing stone steps coming down. And those are 14 feet uphill from the coastal bank in this location. And so in ours, in the new one, the 5 feet to the coastal bank was right in this location here. That's the closest point of the structure. It's not labeled on this plan, but that's the corner of the deck there. And the closest point on the proposed structure is this point up here, which is 14 feet from the coastal bank. And I'll point out this red line with the diamonds along it. This red line is the house for which there's now current active order of conditions. It was approved in 2020 in this location here. So if you'll notice that the house that we have is further back on all of this uphill side, it's considerably further back than the currently approved house, current order conditions. And the only place it gets closer to the ocean is down here, but the house is still 21 feet from the coastal bank when the approved house was labeled as being 3.5 feet from the coastal bank in this location. The red squiggly line through here is the outline of the approved mitigation planting, which was, for the most part, all approved to be planted in this location. It's on the coastal bank. It is under some trees. Some of it is out in the open. It's kind of a rough through here, but not lawn. But the edge of the lawn is down in this location. So what we are proposing currently are the green circles here. And so in this location, because the house, previously approved house, was so close to the edge of the coastal bank, the mitigation had to be pushed back to remain 10 feet away from the structure that's being proposed. In this case, this will all be mitigation up at the top here. The other hatch pattern is a different shade of green running down through here is meadow. It's not mitigation. It's native grass and wildflower mix in here, which will be cut maybe twice a year to keep invasive plants out. But it's up close, but it's a habitat. It's a good transition, I think, from some lawn area and the shrub and tree mitigation area here. But it's not counted as mitigation in there. We do have steps coming down here, which steps do, they step down the bank. And that is obviously for ease of Karen to walk down. There's a proposed lawn area here, and then these steps come down, paralleling the side of the coastal bank. But the coastal bank itself over here will have the wildflower and grass and wildflower mix in there. And it's the same mix of shrubs that were approved, except that there was a number of Rosa rugosa in there, which I know are not the favorite plant. And there we go. So I took the Rosa rugosa out. There's still some Rosa virginiana, but instead of the Rosa rugosa, I put in the arrowwood, Viburnum dentatum arrowwood, instead of that, to keep it more on the native plant side. And then we also added 3 red cedar trees, which will be going along the south property line. 2 here, and then 1 down in this location here, closer to the dune, and more of the shrub mitigation planting in this location. So this was the comment on the staff report that the mitigation planting is not proposed, as close as possible through here, to the resource area, except that it is as close as it can be to a resource because it's on a resource area, and is already it's a somewhat treed through here, and it will can only help this area improve the habitat quality of this area. And the lawn down here is, I know it's very important to Karen. I know she will explain some of that, but I would just back this up and say that this plan, I feel, is an improvement over what was approved previously, the red outline of the approved house, with very much the same mitigation planting, and actually a little bit more mitigation planting on here. You can see from the difference between the red and the green outlines, and the cedar trees located here. And so that is what we are proposing to do. And I will take this down and see if, I don't know if Karen wants to get on now, or if you want to ask some questions first.
I'm happy to just say a few words. I know that we're kind of going long, but I was part of the presentation 2.5 years ago, and many of you were on those hearings as well. And Stephen Doyle and Wayne Tavares did the initial work on the mitigation and the survey. And Stephen unfortunately passed away, so I did hire BSS to have it contiguous between the properties next door. And what happened is I did design a new house in relationship to something that was built next door. And I designed it specifically over the last 2 years to fit what was already approved. And we did discuss this quite a bit 2 years ago. The hill placement really has no understory, and there's a high canopy. And as Tom said, the plan is to have native planting there to hold the hill and stop any possible erosion. That lawn in front of the property, it's a very tight piece of property. And so I'm trying to keep as much as I can preserved. This property has been in our family for 100 years, and those stone walls have a lot of significance, historical significance with our family. And so that was really important. There's an architectural honey locust that I want to preserve and keep open and uninhibited. And so I'm really, trying to preserve what I inherited for future generations. And I feel like my grandmother built those stone walls in 1940s, as well as the jetty. And so, I think I'm totally willing to, if you like the woodier plants instead of the Rosa rugosa, I did try to respond with you on the cedar trees, which were additional. The water has never breached this area. The elevation of the house is at 25 feet. I'm very much of a gardener, and I like to preserve things, and the history of it is really important to me. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Jen?
Mr. Chairman, just the comments in our staff report. Those were the original comments we had when this was first reviewed by the commission 2 years ago. Unless Alyssa has anything to add.
I do not think.
Tom, I'm curious, you have in the southeast corner, you've got 3 dry wells stacked.
Yes.
I'm just curious, why wouldn't you do just a bigger tank leaching pit?
Oh, I think because of the location, it's tougher to get, unless we put them in at the very beginning of the project, it's just tougher to dig the big hole for the leaching pit. And it's, what's the elevation there? I guess the elevation wouldn't matter, but a lot of people like to put in multiple small ones rather than a big one.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to get back
capacity.
there with a backhoe carrying a big pit.
Right, that has the capacity for with the other ones for the whole house.
Yeah, we have those 3 plus two
It's 6,
further
right?
up there and some up on the north side. I had to keep 25 feet away from the septic system. But we have 3, 4, 5, 6 of them scattered around, and I think that's sufficient.
Okay. You now have a walkout, correct?
Yes, down where it says R wall TW 22.5 down in that location there.
Got it.
The lower level is almost 16.2, and basically the grade is, about 16 and a half or close. I think the existing grade there is about 17, so it's going to come down about 10 inches from the existing level down to the floor level, the walkout level.
Thank you. Let's see.
Okay, I have no questions, but I do have a comment, and my comment is, I don't mind where the mitigation is. I think from a wildlife point of view and protection of that coastal bank, it makes sense.
Even with the existing trees?
Yeah, to have a woody, undershrub layer there, it'll provide a lot of habitat for birds and mammals and all kinds of things, insects.
All right. Anything else?
That's all, Jamie. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Courtney?
So my question is, the cedars you're proposing to put in there, are those going to be field cedars or nursery cedars? I mean, given the exposure, I would think you'd want to try to get field cedar.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. If we put them in that tall, then they should be something that's been grown, in some kind of environment. Let's see if we can find that and not out of a nursery.
Yeah, because I made the mistake of planting a field cedar or a nursery cedar at my house, and it just gets battered.
Yeah, I think the 2 closer to the house might be okay, but the one just inland from the dune should definitely be a hardier one.
Okay.
There are a couple.
Other than that, I have no questions. I think it's a nice project.
Thank you. Kevin?
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Pat?
My only comment that it does seem like a nice, thoughtful project, and I like aesthetically the choice for the location of the mitigations, and I defer to our scientist on board when she tells us it's a good location for the critters and the plants. Thank you.
Peter?
No questions or comments.
Steve?
Thank you. I think I'm happy that everything's worked out. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, there's a lot going on in this. It's not a small lot, but it's narrow and tight area all around. All right. Jen? Is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
May I ask one question, Jamie?
Yes.
Do you prefer the new planting schema that I provided this time or the original one that was done 2 years ago with the Rosa rugosa? Any feedback you have, I'd be happy to take. And
I have feedback. I'm not a fan of Rosa rugosa,
okay,
except in really harsh environments.
okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, what are you thinking?
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's nothing further. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Bunker. Thank you, Ms. Alcott.
Thank
you very
you.
much. Good night.
Good.
Pizza
Tom, are
time,
you
Tom.
done?
I think I have nothing else.
Okay.
I hope.
Fine.
Not ready if I do.
Time for pizza for Tom.
That's right. Well, I already had a nice home cooked meal.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Tom.
Thank you.
Night.
All right. Ben, you have something you want to throw in?
Yes, one second now. Mr. Kerfoot, I see that you're in the attendees. Your RDA was already heard and it was approved. So I hope you can hear me. Okay, I'm going to start bringing the next project team in, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. All right, so the next one up is Brian Vona, 78 Gardner Road, Woods Hole, Mass, for permission to reconfigure the driveway, construct a deck and stairs, construct a patio and walkways, install a fence, conduct invasive species management, and install mitigation plantings. All right, Jen, now you're up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Sean Riley up. I can trim from Wilkinson. Sean is from Coastal Engineering Company to present their project. Is there anybody else I'm promoting up with your project team?
No, that should be it.
Just you two? Okay, excellent.
And I'll share my
You're up,
screen.
sir.
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. With me is Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson Ecological. Quick overview of the existing conditions of the property. We have land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is divided up between a VE zone and an AE zone. In this location here, this is the mapped line delineating the V and the A. And then we have the 25-foot Falmouth V zone offset in this location here. We're on the bay side. The property is located between the bay and Gardner Road. We have a revetted coastal bank on the seaward side. We have a small coastal bank along the western side of the property, as well as a BVW along the western side of the property. And I apologize for not providing you the forms. We'll get those over to you tomorrow morning for the delineation of that wetland. We've obviously got land under ocean. And we have all the A and the B zones demarcated on the plan from those respective resource areas. So for any of you that got to the property, there is a existing house, lawn, a paved driveway. There's a lot of landscaped areas around the house. What we're proposing to do is to remove everything you see here in red, which results in a reduction of 2,500 square feet of impervious coverage within the flood zone, which also includes some retaining walls, staircases, a large portion of the paved driveway, and then a net out of what we're removing from stone steppers to the proposed patio areas that are shown on the proposed plan, which I'll get to in a minute. Just a correction on the trees that are to be removed. There are 12 trees that are proposed to be removed within the buffer zone to any of the resource areas. And then there are 8 trees that are in the area outside of the buffer zones that are proposed to be removed. Katrine will get more into the restoration aspect of the project and the mitigation, as well as the replacement of the trees when I complete what we're doing for the proposed work. So everything you see here in red is to be removed: boulders, pavement, patio surfaces, pea stone, and the front entryway. So in the proposed condition, we are going to keep a paved portion of the driveway leading up to the courtyard and the parking court, which is all pea stone pervious surface. It is fairly steep to come up into the access way, so we are keeping that as a paved surface. The entryway area is being consolidated to get to the front door with a new landscape staircase with some walls that have been brought in much closer to the inside corner of the house, which should be a benefit as far as the velocity zone is, because the existing wall projects out beyond the foundation, which could cause any wave deflection or diffraction. So we've really brought the retaining walls back in closer to the inside corner of the house. They're proposing just outside the buffer a couple of raised plant beds with a stone dust walkway to connect around to the new proposed bluestone granite patio. Underneath the existing deck, and I'm going to share an image with you just to clarify. Can you see this image?
Not yet.
Not yet. Let me just reshare that then. Let me just share that particular screen. So there is a existing stone area underneath the deck that we'll be looking to put a bluestone with wide gap joints underneath the deck. It's no closer to the resource area than the existing deck. It would be within the footprint of what you see here. The deck extends over a little bit. Let me go in the other direction. So again, in this area here, the deck extends over and projects out closer to the resource area than we're intending to go. So everything that we're proposing, let me jump back to the site plan. So everything we're proposing is further away than the resource area. We have dimensions to that corner of the deck that I just showed you in the picture is 25 feet 7 from the top of coastal bank. The proposed secondary access egress stair that goes up to the proposed to go up to the upper deck is 27 feet, 27 and a half feet. And then the closest point of the patio is 28.3 feet to the top of the coastal bank. So this is the closest areas that are being proposed on the project. We are pulling back. If you take a quick look at where the pavement extends now, it's almost even with the edge of the inside corner of the house. And you can see with the proposed parking court, we're really pulling that back away from the resource area and also making that a pervious surface. We are proposing to remove and replace the stockade fence that runs along the perimeter of the property. And on that fence, putting some kayak hooks to store their kayaks. With that, I'm going to either open it up to questions if you prefer to answer, have any questions on this part, or I could go to Katrine and she could talk about the landscape management.
Let's hear from Katrine first,
Very good.
please.
Stop sharing and let her.
Katrine, it's all on you.
Okay. Just trying to share this. Can you see that?
Almost.
No, I just lost it, I think. Sorry.
There it is.
There. Okay. Okay. Good evening, Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson Ecological Design for the record. And our work really focuses on invasive plant management and native plant restoration over the entire naturalized area of the property within jurisdiction. It's about 5,700 square feet of naturalized area plus 1,000 square feet of lawn removal. And the extent of really, if you went out and saw the site, the extent of the invasive and non-native plant species varies throughout the property. There's a really thick cover of invasive species that the photos that Sean was just showing really, you could see that actually there's some Phragmites and a lot of porcelainberry, bittersweet, multiflora rose and shrub honeysuckle. And that's really along that wetland edge that's adjacent to the western property line. And then other areas still contain some native species such as elderberry, oak, high tide bush, bayberry, and even some herbaceous species like goldenrod. There's also some native, fairly large boulders lying along this edge of the wetland along the western property line. Overall, I'd say that it's kind of hard to estimate this, but I would estimate that there's probably about if you looked at the entire area, in some, it would be about 70% invaded with 30% remaining as native vegetation. So similar to other of our projects, we're proposing to remove the invasive and non-native vegetation using low impact equipment where we have access, and then probably closer to the wetland, although it's a thin strip there, but we would be just working in hand removal where it's more sensitive. And we would immediately seed the area with a native seed mix that we're showing on our plan. And that really, those species in particular, they have nice root systems that extend into the soil and provide long-term soil stability that really is lacking with the invasives that are currently pressuring the area. So as you can see, and Sean noted it as well, we're proposing to remove 11 trees, so it's actually 12 trees probably. We were considering one of them, I think one tree, but it in fact might be 2 trees, this right here. So if we could say that there's 12 trees to be removed, and really those are focused on that one in particular. Those 2 there are really close to the property, and then a lot of them are in declining health. And that's really where the tree removal is focused, is on non-native trees that are in declining health. There's a leaning Austrian pine, and then there's 2 Japanese pines in this area that are more like a shrub form and really not doing so well. So we'd like to remove them and then replace them with native trees. And we're proposing 11 now. If we wanted to bump that up to 12, so that is a 1-to-1 ratio, that would work. But overall, in addition to the 11 or 12 trees, we're proposing 131 shrubs as shown on our plan. The trees would be focused on cedars, eastern red cedars and holly, and then shrubs such as inkberry, bayberry, Carolina rose, beech plum, arrowwood, and serviceberry and New Jersey tea. So overall, 6,700 square feet. This is a restoration project. I think that's important to note. There's no mitigation required. So this is really focused on a restoration of this area to remove the invasives and to provide better habitat available for wildlife, and also enhance stormwater function. Getting those native grasses in this area is key to allow for infiltration of stormwater before it turns into runoff. And with that, both Sean and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Sean, so you're saying that the patio is not gonna, it's just gonna stay in the same footprint?
That's correct. Underneath the deck,
Okay. Can you
within
put
that.
Can you put your plan on with that blue
Sure.
box?
Yep. So essentially it's this area.
Okay, so
underneath.
that's the patio area, and
Yep.
where you have your 23.5, you're saying that's the deck?
This is the deck extension, extends out to
All right.
here. That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Because if you can see it on your plan, you have that little black dot, and that's why we thought it was the stone patio going beyond the
Oh,
deck.
I see. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
labeled a lit.
I'm with you. Yep.
That's how we picked that up.
I
Okay.
gotcha. Yep.
The board's gonna have, okay, you can stop sharing, Sean.
Yep.
The board will need to decide if you want the fence and that portion of the fence in the velocity zone. You usually, don't allow stockade type fences in a V zone. Katrina, can you go back to the trees? How many are being removed?
There are 12 to be removed in within jurisdiction. Sean was showing some on his plan that we didn't include outside of jurisdiction, outside of the buffer. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4 here in this area, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the 11, 12 are up here.
Is this entire property in the flood zone?
It is.
Okay, so that's why, the flood zone is a protected resource area. So that's why we keyed in on the 20 trees being removed in the flood zone. So when we say jurisdiction, we also mean the entire flood zone. So that's where our 20 number came from, Sean. Is it because we counted all the trees on your plan?
So there are going to be, we can show trees in that area for sure. They're going to be planted there anyway. The homeowner wants them, so that's no problem. We could bump that up to the 20 for a 1-to-1 ratio.
That's fine. Monitoring reports, and you covered the invasive area. And we just felt that the planting of the 131 trees for that large area of restoration was a little light. When we did, 4 foot on center for, it popped out, 384 plants to cover that area. So the board can discuss that. And I don't have anything else unless Alyssa has anything to add. These are her notes.
I just wanted to comment that also proposed on that part of the fence in the velocity zone is the storage of some kayaks. So I don't know if that would be an issue for the board being the velocity zone, but that's all I have.
Katrina, could you stop sharing, please?
Sorry. Yes.
No, that's fine.
That's fine.
Through the
Thank
chair,
you.
if I could just address the kayak storage.
Yes, sir.
So that would just be on a daily basis, when they're using them to go out to the beach. Obviously, when they're going away, they'd be stored within the garage. Or when they're not using them, they'd be stored in the garage. They have a storage area, but it was just for ease of access to get down to the beach. So if there are any storms coming, obviously they would remove those from for the temporary storage that's the racks.
But the rack would stay in place, correct?
The rack would stay in place. It'd be bolted to the post.
Okay. All right, commissioner comments. Pat,
When was that fence put up? Was it permitted by the Concom?
I don't know the history of the fence.
I looked at burials. It's been there for a very long time. I would say at least early 2000s. I don't remember identifying a particular date, but it's been there quite a while.
The obvious reason I'm asking that is this grandfathered? Otherwise, I don't think we should allow fence in the velocity zone. Can you show us on the plan how far back the velocity zone goes?
Sure. So the velocity zone goes back to the 25-foot offset for the Falmouth V zone is back in this corner here.
Okay.
And if I spoke with Jennifer about this on the site, the homeowner may be amenable to not put back a wood stockade fence, but more of something that wouldn't become waterborne debris, like a powder coated. It's really for security, a powder coated aluminum, which obviously wouldn't become waterborne debris. We specified those in other areas. They're obviously anchored down. So, you know, they'd be able to take any of the wave action that's coming through there. We'd need to work with they'd also like, I mean, the second part of the stockade is it provides privacy. And they're also amenable to working with the town to see if they can do restoration of that access path that has multiple invasives, and then introduce more native species, cedars, within that area to provide that screening. So we are amenable to a continuance if the fence is an issue, to explore other options if the remaining members see fit.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sean, if you would stop sharing. Please.
Yep.
And I know I go back and forth. We ask for it to be shared, then not. Just easier to see everybody and see if there's any comments. Jen, you had something?
Just that I have the aerials up right now. You can see it in the 2001 aerial, Pat, but you cannot see it in the aerial imagery. It says 1990s, so I don't even have a date of when the 90s aerial was taken. It just gives me a general, just says 90s. So it's not there in the 90s, or I can't visibly see it, but you can see it in the 2001 aerial.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Peter.
I just want to clarify something. With the fence giving privacy, that's privacy from the town-owned strip of land that the public uses?
That is correct.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Steve?
My questions are about the fence. It seems that there's a need, and I wasn't clear on the regulation, so I appreciate this discussion. But I do feel that there's a need for a barrier there, and the town's landing area is pretty rough.
Betsy?
I'm concerned about the fence too. I actually found it kind of charming that Alyssa said it was there for a long time, since the early 2000s. But our regulations go back, our bylaw goes back to 1979. So, yeah, so Sean and Katrin, how do you pronounce your name? Katrine.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could investigate alternatives to maybe a natural fence, some kind of a natural fence.
Sure.
Those are my only, and my other comment is this was kind of a fun project to look at. This is going to be a nice project.
Thank
Agreed.
you.
Courtney?
I'll just second Betsy's comments. I agree.
All right.
Natural fence, I think, is the way to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's a common theme here. It's a great project. I mean, too bad you got to look at that view all the time, though. I mean,
It's tough. It's tough. isn't
Torture,
it?
right?
yeah, it's sacrifices we have to make, right? All right, Kevin.
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Ken, is there anything in the public chat function?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Sean, I think you've heard, I think the fence is something we're gonna have to, we kind of need to address.
We're amenable and would request a continuance.
Okay,
I have May 4th available, Sean. Will that work for you?
Yes, that should work.
So at the request of the applicant, I'll make a motion to continue this till May 4th.
Bird, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until May 4th. If there's nothing further. All right, I'm calling for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I,
It is unanimous. We have continued this until May 4th.
Very good. Thank you for
Sean.
your time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Katrine.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.
Next up, Joseph R. Shaker, manager, Eldridge Drive. Eldridge Drive 8 LLC, number 8 Eldridge Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE an existing dwelling. Construct a new dwelling on the existing foundation. Restore the driveway, reconfigure the walkways, and install a dry well. Ben?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I have just promoted Raul from Cape Islands up to present his project. Hi, Raul.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. For the records, Raul Lizardi from Cape Islands Engineering, representing the applicant, 8 Eldridge Drive, LLC. Jen, if you could also, I believe Mr. Joe Shaker, the applicant is in the public.
Yes.
If you could promote him in case there's any questions for him. And also his contractor, Scott Miller, may also be in the public.
Yes. I'm promoting those gentlemen up right now.
Thank you. So for the record, yes, this is a project for a notice of intent to raise and rebuild a house. The property is at 8 Eldridge Drive in North Falmouth. The wetland resources at the property are land under the ocean, which is Megansett Harbor. There is land containing shellfish, the same harbor. There's a coastal beach. There are 2 coastal banks. I'm going to start sharing my screen to better describe what I'm presenting.
Sir.
So hopefully everyone can see the plan. It is the same plan that was submitted for the application. So to the top part of the page, we have Megansett Harbor. Then just off the coastal beach, we have one first coastal bank, which is an eroding coastal bank. Atop that first coastal bank, there's a flat area. And then there's a secondary coastal bank. The site is partially located in the velocity flood zone, which is this FZ line that we show going across midway through the secondary coastal bank. And then there's the upland portion of the property, which is at elevations of 20s, 24, 25, 26s. But it is all contained within the buffer zones to the coastal banks and the resources. The applicant proposes to completely raise the existing structure, but keep the existing foundation. So they're going to build a 2-story house in place of this 1-story residence with a couple of modifications. The footprint of the main house doesn't really change except for what I'm going to be highlighting in this area over here. There's currently an existing porch that covers from the left side of the garage to the right side wing of the house. They're proposing to reduce the size of that porch. They're also looking to relocate this existing generator to the opposite side of the property. There's an existing AC pad on the right side of the property, and they're going to put a second AC pad. And one of the existing window wells is going to be replaced with an escape well. to have emergency access or exit out of the basement. The front around the existing garage, there's existing stepping stones and some stone patios, brick walkways. That's all going to be removed and replaced with a new walkway. So all the proposed work results in a net reduction of about 4 square feet. 4 square feet of development, which in turn does not trigger mitigation requirements in terms of mitigation shrubs. The main improvement that we're doing at this property is the collection of roof downspouts and the discharge into 3 dry wells. So we propose 3 dry wells at 3 locations to collect roof runoff. Currently, this corner, when I visited the site, this corner back here has a direct discharge onto the bank. So this is going to be a big improvement by eliminating that discharge. We received staff comments for this project. One of the comments was that there was some debris at the beach for this project. When I visited the site a month ago, that roof shingle that was kind of washed ashore on the beach was not at the property. So that must have been something that just washed up pretty recently, or it was after a storm of some sort. The homeowner did have his contractor go to the site this morning and remove that debris. That practically sums up the project. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Raul. Joe, do you have anything to add at this time?
No, Raul did a great job. There's just really no mitigation, and we're just, following the process. And Raul's my leader, so I'll just follow his lead. Thank you.
All right. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Raul, I saw your email addressing our structural questions, so thank you. And thank you for addressing the debris down the bank. The only thing I will add to that is, although mitigation is not required, the board does like to see some sort of improvement to the property. So are you saying the dry wells are going to be your improvement?
That's currently what we're proposing. I know that during the site visit, Joe wanted to remove the existing hedge. I don't know if you recall visiting the site, and I'll share my screen once again to kind of highlight the area that I'm talking about. So there's a big hedge, evergreen, at this location. So the applicant was looking to remove it. It's an evergreen. Maybe one improvement could be to replace that with some native shrubs, if the commissioners are willing to condition it that way, because the applicant does not like the appeal of that shrub, and it is a non-native. So that could be an improvement if the board chooses to. On the other side of the stairs going down the slope to the west side, there's a row of hydrangeas, but those are pretty shrubs. So I don't know that unless the applicant wants to remove them and replace them with natives, I don't know if it's a good idea to replace those.
Okay, well, I'll just ask the question so the board can discuss it. I know one of them was going to ask that of you, Raul, so I just beat them to it. But nice presentation. Unless Melissa has anything to add.
I just had one question for Raul, and I apologize if I missed it. I was looking for something while you were speaking. Did you address the civil engineer stamp as you did in our email?
So yes, so a civil engineer can review structural designs. So a structural engineer is a subcategory of civil engineers. So the stamp by the structural engineer was a civil engineer, but civil engineers are qualified to do such reviews.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that explained on the record because we've had an instance like this before where the board really wanted to see that structural engineering stamp. And I believe, Jen, there were a couple aspects to the order of conditions. Wanted one, yeah. So I just wanted them to understand that the stamp was not a structural engineer, but that was part of Mr. Galligan's discipline.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Ben,
Nothing more, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Raul, all due respect, explain the structural engineer again. I know it's a subcategory, but doesn't mean they all get to that, correct?
So right, for example, I'm a civil engineer. I did get educated for structural design. I just haven't been practicing for 20 years structural engineering in my field. I've been just strictly doing civil engineering, but I do have the ability to review structural designs. If I wanted to, I just don't feel comfortable because over 20 years I have not done it. But Tom Gallagher, that's what he's been doing. He's been doing structural designs.
And he has a stamp to that effect?
He has a civil engineer, yes.
It's a
No,
civil.
that's not what I'm asking. I'm trying to clarify. It's the structural piece is what we're looking for.
So a civil engineer is qualified to review structural foundations.
All right, I'll let it go for now. All right, Steve.
Thank you. I thought this was a great idea to just put a building back on the same foundation. Hopefully the chairman's questions are answered and his concerns, but on this site, I couldn't think of an alternative. Thank you.
No, and just to reiterate, I mean, I think it's great that it's going in the same footprint and all that. My only concern with whether it's structural or not is that if you will, turns out not to be adequate, then you'd be coming back to us for approval to take the foundation out. And not to say you would do it, Raul, but you know, some people come back and go, oh, it's an emergency, you need to approve it today. And that doesn't work for me. So that's why we look for the structural stamp. Follow me? So Betsy.
So, yeah, I think this is a good project. Raul, you didn't promote the fact that you're eliminating a direct discharge as an improvement. And I think the idea of replacing the hedge with native plants, and at the risk of having Jen give me a hard time, I'm not going to make any comment about the hydrangeas. And that's all, Jamie.
All right. Courtney.
My misgivings are the same as yours. And that is that I understand there's seems to be some lack of clarity on the issue of structural and civil engineers. But I know there are engineers who are structural engineers, that's what their stamp is, and they can certify whether a foundation or a 20-story office building is structurally sound. I would not hire a civil engineer, in all due respect, Raul, if I were designing a 40-story high-rise building. I would hire a structural engineer who is qualified to deal with that and who practiced that as a regular basis. That said, my concerns are exactly the same. That is, if this foundation may be okay, and that's fine, it probably is, but if it turns out it isn't, and you have to come back, or the applicant has to come back, because the scope of work now changes significantly and therefore has more impact than what you'd planned, it's a problem for everybody. And that's why I want to see this thing resolved now, so we don't have that. I want to feel comfortable in approving this project, that it's all appropriate. And that's not to question your qualifications as a civil engineer to evaluate structure, or whoever it is that you've got a letter from. But that's my feeling, and I'm very concerned about it. And I can't support this project, frankly, unless I see an engineer's, structural engineer's stamp. I will not vote for it.
All right, Kevin.
The only question I would ask, and it probably can't be answered now, was there a structural engineer's stamp on the original construction of the foundation? Probably not. And you'd probably find that a civil engineer's stamp would be acceptable. Whether the board is anxious about that, I can see, but in the circumstances, in terms of what we're talking about as a project, I don't see it as that big a deal.
Can I chime in?
Yes, sir.
This is Scott Miller. I'm from Newbridge Construction Company, and I'm going to be building the new house for Joe.
Can you turn your video on, please?
Yeah, I'm not too good at this. How do I do that?
You and me both.
I'm really bad at this.
It's
Sorry.
on the top. It says video.
There we go. So my name is Scott Miller. I'm the president of Newbridge Construction Company. I have been building homes in Metro West Boston and Cape Cod for over 30 years. And a civil engineer, as Poole explained, does have the discipline and the ability to stamp structural drawings and structural plans. And Tom Galligan works a lot with Longfellow Design Build out of Falmouth and stamps foundations, structural drawings, brace wall analysis, shear wall analysis every single day. And so he is qualified, and his discipline in his studies was structural design. So structural engineers are licensed and do have the ability to stamp structural drawings. We do it all the time, every single day. So the other gentleman on the board was correct. Probably when the foundation was installed, it's not required. And this really is an issue to be addressed by the building department. And if there is an issue with the foundation, the building department would not issue a building permit and would require additional information. So if a building permit is not issued, then we would address it at that point. However, Tom Galligan is certified and has the ability to stamp that the foundation has the structural integrity to support the new house, second floor.
Okay, so again, no disrespect to anybody involved, okay? So my only point is simply, if you get to the building department, they won't issue a permit, then you're gonna need to come back to us. And again, it's just, I'm just throwing it out there so that there's no confusion. It doesn't constitute an emergency.
That's understood, and we're happy to have you make that a condition.
Okay, well, again, I just want it out there because, you know, the last thing we want to do is, you know, once we get through all this is to slow a project down, but that's why we just try to cover everything out of the gate.
Understood. You know, we're subject to the International Residential Building Code now, and there are incredible requirements required to issue building permits these days. And we have civil engineers like Tom. Tom does this every single day. Like I said, I'm sure everyone on the board is familiar with Longfellow Design Build. They do this all the time, and Tom is the structural engineer on staff with them, that civil engineer, but structural background and discipline and education. And he stamps their plans every single day.
Okay, moving on. Where did I leave off? Okay, Pat, sorry.
I have no questions, thank you.
Peter?
Just to say my 2 cents worth here, I would be more comfortable with a letter from the structural engineer saying a little bit about his qualifications, not maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and that he approves it. And secondly, acknowledgement that if something happens during the construction phase or immediately after the construction phase regarding the foundation work, it's not an emergency for us. It's so it would have to go through the normal 2 or 3 month cycle to get this board's approval because the foundation was a concern. And that's it.
Yeah, I hope it wouldn't be 2 or 3 months. All right, Courtney, you have something, is it new?
Yeah, not really, except that I just want to disagree with Mr. Miller. You know, I understand the building department is the one that oversees these sorts of things and issues permits. But our job is the impact on the environment. It's not, and the impact on the environment is going to be modified significantly if that foundation has to be removed and rebuilt and change the scope of work. And that's, so the whole rationale behind this is so that once you leave us and you're signed off with conservation, we don't need to see you again. It's not that we wouldn't like to, we would rather not.
Right.
Would you
I think we
mind,
made our point.
Mr. Matthews, can I jump in for a second? Mr. Bird, I just want to let you know, when we looked at this home and we're looking at doing this project, the first thing I did was bring in someone to check the foundation because the last thing I want to do is have a vision and not be able to follow through on that vision. We joke around, don't want to play mind games with ourselves. So that was the first thing that we had inspected. We didn't really do that. Just so that we could meet up with the folks here. That was done prior at my request for the same exact concerns. So yes, I think that we can, again, take that where if it is not effective, that we have to go through the slow process or whatever that is. We're not trying to put any pressure on anybody in this committee. We know you have lots of things to do and you're being called on for multiple issues all over the town. And we're not trying to slow anything down. So we're willing to say if in fact we're wrong and all the assessments that I've done previous to purchasing as part of my purchase of the house are wrong, which I'm positive they're not, then we will go through the slow process and do everything that you required because we're not trying to do anything or slip anything. We're doing everything above board here. And I know there's a misunderstanding as to what discipline and if you're civil, are you practicing structural? I totally understand what's going on here. And I totally understand your misgivings. I definitely understand. But again, I did all these exams prior to even, prior to the whole portion of even thinking of putting on a second story. And that foundation is off the rails in good shape. It looks like it was last year's foundation. So we can provide you the information you need. And we are willing to not go and be rushed or put any pressure on this committee. That's not what our intent is. Our intent is to do things correctly. As you can see by what Raul's proposed, the no mitigation, and trying to just do everything above board and correctly. So I really appreciate your concerns, and we're willing to go by what Mr. Matthews said in terms of, yes, and Mr. Walsh as well, in terms of not coming back. Rush jobs, none of that nonsense. That's not what we're about here. So I really appreciate you giving me that moment to let you know how we approached it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function? Hold on, Betsy.
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
Betsy?
So I have two quick comments. One is, I think these concerns could be handled with a condition. And second, just to know, just to let the three of you who are presenting know that this isn't picking on you just out of the blue. That about 5 years ago, we had a case where we hadn't required this at the time. And lo and behold, the foundation didn't work. And before you knew it, and before they said anything to our board, they were in there digging it out. So it's, you know, it's a little caution on our part to, as Courtney said, you know, our job is to protect the environment. And if you have to dig a big hole there, that adds a new dimension to conditions.
All right.
That's it, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. And it's unfortunate there's this ambiguity about structural engineers versus civil engineers. You know, but I, you know, in my own mind, and I've been in the business for 30 years, and I'm fully aware of the current code because I'm in the process of renewing my license. So, you know, I'm brushing up on the code book, and I'm glad that I'm 82 and not going to have to do this much longer, because it's getting extraordinarily difficult and costly to build. And so, you know, but I'm concerned. I just want to make sure that these projects go smoothly, not just because we're trying to be a pain in the neck, but because we'd rather have the thing done right and you and everybody else be comfortable going forward. And if that means that we need to require a structural engineer,
we
it
beat
is,
this
and
to
that's
death.
what we want to require. That's all. No more comment.
Thank you. All right, what are you thinking?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
I'll second Gladfelter.
Thank you. There's nothing further? We have a motion and a second on the table to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Hughes, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Mr. Shaker, Mr.
Thank you.
Miller.
Night.
All right, next up is 70 Cary Lane has already been continued. Therefore, next up, Joseph W. and Jean M. Sanger, 32 Valley Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a second-story addition, remove an existing patio, construct a sunroom, and expand the existing deck. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming Raul's here to present this project as well, since it's a Cape and Islands plan.
Good evening.
Oh, welcome back. You want to talk
Yes.
about foundation? Kidding. I'm kidding.
Actually, we made that touch on that. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant on this project. I will share my screen for reviewing the plan with the board. So this project is to propose a couple of additions to the existing house. There are several resources around this property. I'll zoom out a little bit out of this current view I have. Over to the south of the property, there is a stream that traverses the south corner of the property. And then over to the northwest, there is another stream. So this property, the majority of it is within the riverfront area. This pink line that I'm hovering over corresponds to the 200-foot riverfront. This other pink line corresponds to the 100-foot riverfront. The property is also within 100 feet of coastal banks. There are several coastal banks. Some of them are graded natural slopes. Others are man-made retained slopes. And there's also BVWs, both across the street on Valley Road and on the adjacent properties and on the same property associated with a stream. There's a large bordering vegetative wetland to the south and to the west. And there's another bigger wetland on the abutting property to the west. So the property is, or the homeowner is looking to do some improvements to the property to make an addition on this back corner of the house. There's currently an existing patio The homeowner wants to remove the patio and build a sunroom, kind of smaller footprint than the existing patio, but 13 feet from the top of the coastal bank. That 13 feet, it's equal to the existing 13 feet of the existing garage corner to the same coastal bank. And then he proposes to do an extension of 3 feet to the wooden deck that exists to the west of the property. That extension is also limited to that 13 feet of the existing garage to a coastal bank. Also, an addition is planned on the attic space of the garage area. This existing garage has an attic as storage, and what the homeowner wants to do is convert that attic space into living space with some dormers. So this portion that is over the garage in an L shape, those are going to be dormers off of the garage. There's also a proposed step at the existing rear deck that's going to be replacing a smaller stone step. At this location, it's proposed to be a 1 foot by 8 foot step. We're proposing to do a new dry well to collect the runoff from the proposed roof of this sunroom. And we're also proposing to do mitigation plantings. We obtained the plans and the other condition from the last permit at this property. And on this south corner of the property, there was mitigation that was planted for the last permit on the project on this property. So what we're proposing to do is propose the mitigation plantings that's required for these additions just next or upland of that mitigation planting that took place in the past. We're required to propose to plant approximately 170 square feet of plantings. This 4 foot strip accounts to approximately 200 square feet of plantings. All of it is located within the A zone to the BVW on the backyard, and it's within the riverfront area. Also, it is within the coastal bank. There's no proposed increase in bedrooms, so the septic system that was upgraded some years ago will remain the same. We did receive comments from staff, similar to the project before, about a structural design or a structural letter for the foundation. However, because this garage is a slab on grade foundation, the foundation cannot be inspected without actually digging it up to see the condition of the foundation. So a letter was not possible from the contractor to provide for this project. There was also comments about the existing stones along the front yard. This front yard on the property from Valley Road up towards the property slopes up. So it is a coastal bank as we delineated on the plan. And there are some field stones occupying this bank. It's stones that are laid around the trees and shrubs, but it is occupying approximately an area of 50 feet by probably 4 feet deep. The question from staff was that this seemed to have been a fairly recent improvement on the property. We actually don't have that information of when this was done. The comparison from staff was Google Street View from 2011. With that same Google Street View, you see some of the stones, but it's tough to tell how much of that stone there is. I know currently the homeowner raked off all the leaves over the stones, so you can clearly see how much stone there is, but we have no idea when this took place and how much of it is new, if any. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Raul. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for clarifying that, Raul. I'm the one that picked up, thought that sunroom, is that what it's going to be, a sunroom?
Yes.
We're moving closer, but I see what you're doing there. You'll probably get a same condition if something has to go, if they have to redig up that garage slab, then you'll have to come back and approve it under an amendment. And the stones were just odd. So I don't know what the board wants to do for that, if you want them to mitigate for those stones on that bank, Like Raul said, and Alyssa does incredible homework on these properties. The only thing we could find was something from like 2011 Google Street View. You can't really see it in the aerial, so we don't know when that little landscape feature, for lack of a better term, or you could call it armoring that little bank. I don't know when it showed up.
All right.
Unless
Alyssa?
Alyssa has anything to add.
Yeah, just to expand on that little stone wall. If I remember correctly, the 2012 plan doesn't show that stone wall. So I think sometime in the past 10 years, it's been expanded. When you look on aerials, it's much more evident in the past recent years. I'm not sure if that means it was in all these rocks were laid in the past few years, or maybe just more vegetation was removed. I'm not quite sure. When it was labeled as stone wall in the plan, that was not what I thought it was going to look like when I got onto the site. So it just stood out to me. I mean, being on the coastal bank, I'm not sure if the commission would require mitigation for that. So that's why I pointed it out. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can show a couple of pictures, because I know we're talking about this stone wall, and the commissioners probably, unless you went to the site, you probably don't know what we're talking about. I'm going to share a couple of pictures I have here. So hopefully you can all see this picture. This is on the left bottom corner. That's the driveway coming into the property. So on the right is Valley Road. And as I zoom into this picture, you see all these field stones. You also see some natural native boulders. So these are the field stones when we did the survey that we located. Of course, when we did the survey, this was back in January. So there's leaf litter covering. I believe when Alyssa went to the site and took a picture, all this leaf litter was removed from them. The site has been raked off. So it looks, you can actually see how much of the field stones are exposed now. This is at the location of the pole. On the right side, you have some of the flat stone, field stone, and on the left side, you have some of the more typical Cape Cod rounded field stones. So that's what it's not necessarily a stone wall. What it really is some field stones on the slopes is what is best described as. That way the commissioners have a better understanding of what is the stone wall, what's being talked about. It's not that it's removing vegetation from the slope. We did look at the 2012 plan that was approved by the commission for the earth condition back then, but even that plan didn't even call this a coastal bank. So that plan for some reason was lacking some information. So I'm not sure that there was concentration on this front side of the property because most of the work was not nearby this area.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner comments, Courtney.
Raul, when was the house built originally?
Let's table that until I find the question.
I mean,
the answer.
I mean, say in the last 20 years.
It's older than that. I just have to pull up my narrative to find out.
Late 70s, early 80s, I think.
What I'm getting to is there was some questions that the staff had about the structural integrity of a garage foundation slab on grade. I know you can do a haunch slab, but I suspect there was a 4-foot frost wall or whatever. The fact is that, you know, this is a little different, I think, than the previous application where they were putting a second story on an existing foundation. This is more dormering an existing thing, and so it's not really adding that much. So I'm not too concerned about whether or not what's there will be supported.
Got it.
That's what I mean, if the house was built in 1943, who knows what's there? If it's on slab, or they may have just poured a 4-inch slab on grade and went up, but, you know, if it was built in the last 20 years or 25 years, I suspect there's a 4-foot frost wall there.
It was there in 1975.
When?
1975, I can see it in the aerials.
Okay. It's getting into the marginal area, but I'm not, you're not adding that much by dormering it as opposed to putting a whole new floor on and all of that. I don't
All right,
know.
anything else?
No.
Okay. Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Pat?
No questions. Thank you.
Peter?
No questions. Thank you.
Steve?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Betsy?
Just a couple of comments. One is that the stone on the coastal bank is actually not on the property. It's outside the property lines or right against the property line. And the other is that doesn't really bother me that much on that coastal bank.
All right. Lucky for Raul. All right. My question is about the deck, Raul, on the west end. Is that permitted?
So yeah, the existing deck currently, that was the last order of condition that was approved by this board in 2012.
Okay, before my time. Thank you. All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
For a second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you,
Thank you.
Raul.
Sit tight, Raul.
All right. Next up, Harvey P. Stein, Stein trustee, Harvey P. 57 Moonpenny Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct an addition, reconstruct an existing deck, and install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant has requested a continuance until May 4th.
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until May 4th. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until May 4th. Thank you. Next up, continued hearings under notice of intent. AMP Solar US Services LLC, 41, 42, 48, and 59 Theater Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct and maintain a solar array system to remove 4 existing buildings and associated appurtenances. To install restoration plantings, solar modules, and a perimeter fence and all associated grading. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Guess who's here to present the project? It's Raul. Who am I promoting up?
Yes, I believe Andrew is on the public, Mike Larking and Maria Bazzelli.
Got him. I thought it was those 3, but I wasn't sure.
All right, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, the quorum does not include Betsy, Kevin, and Pat.
Correct. The quorum is Jamie, Peter, Courtney, and Steve.
We have 4.
We have 4.
All right. Thank you. Raul, you're up, sir.
For the record, Raul Isardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant, and also with us tonight is Andrew, Mike, and Maria from AMP, the applicants. So this project was presented a month ago to this board, and we continue to address a couple of items that were raised during that first hearing. So we revised the plan, and we also submitted additional information based on the feedback from that first hearing. One of the main questions from that first hearing had to do with one of the wetlands at the property. It was questioned whether the wetland could be considered a vernal pool. So we engaged with LEC Environmental to revisit the site and look at this wetland. So LEC had staff go to the site in 2 different occasions, and they could not determine or find evidence of vernal pool activity. I believe conservation staff also went to the site based on the report that we just received. In one of the site visits, they didn't see any evidence. In another visit, they saw, I guess, some clumpings of some eggs, but nothing to qualify it to be a certifiable vernal pool. Regardless of whether or not this would be considered a vernal pool, we did revise the design for this layout. Because we only had a month to present this before you again, what we decided to do is eliminate all the fencing and all the array system within the 100-foot buffer to this particular wetland. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and briefly explain what we did for this case. So hopefully everyone can see this plan. So this is the same plan that was presented a month ago. And if I go back to my pencil, if I find it. So this is the area that was of concern within the 100-foot buffer to this wetland. So what we did, we took this one table and moved it up here. Then we took this second table and moved it down here. So ultimately, what this results is in this comparison. On the left of this picture, you see what we presented a month ago, and on the right is the revised plan. So we have 2 of the panels that are now no longer in this area. So now that area is completely void. The fencing was completely removed from the 100-foot buffer to that wetland. So that kind of takes that portion of the project outside of the 100-foot buffer to that wetland. Then another revision that we did had to do with the proposed planting nearby the larger vernal pool and closer to Coonamessett Pond. So what we had done in this site is we were asked to propose a connection between the vernal pool, wetland planting, and the other isolated wetland at this location in Fairway 18. So this revised plan now shows a through connection of wetland species plantings within that area. So that area before was 2 different areas. Now it's just one continuous area of about 5,500 square feet. The other change that we did in this revision is delineate the 35-foot buffer. And this is the one area that we're calling out for the existing turf to be removed. We did not want to remove the entire 2 acre of turf in jurisdiction. We believe that will be too much disturbance and it will allow too much sedimentation too close to the wetlands that it may create more harm than good. So what we compromise here is this 35-foot buffer, which is approximately 21,000 square feet of land for the turf in this area to be removed before we plant the new native species. The amount of native species or the species of native species was increased, and we revised the list of plant species, some for the wetland areas to be wetland type species and some for the upland areas to be more of the upland species. We also did the same with the proposed trees that are being planted at this site. Another revision that we did to the plan, and it's not something that was brought up at the first hearing, but it's something that it is important for this particular project. So this project, we're raising 4 of the structures. All of these structures have on-site domestic wells. But 2 of the wells are within conservation jurisdiction. And all of these wells, because they are serving what appears to be a public benefit, because the golf course is a public use, we show this well over here to be decommissioned. And we would like this commission to make a finding that as part of the appurtenances that are being removed with the raising of these structures is the decommissioning of the existing wells. That is important because in order to decommission these wells that are registered at DEP, they have to have some acknowledgement from the local boards that they are okay with these wells being decommissioned. So it's just a matter of getting the proper paperwork ahead of decommissioning these wells. And these are the 2 that fall within 100 feet of wetlands or the ponds. So we did that revision to the plan just to call them out. It is included as part of the decommissioning part of all the appurtenances, or the removal of all the appurtenances and utilities for all the structures. But this too, because they're within 100 feet of the ponds, we just want to be able to call them out. And if this commission makes it a finding that as part of the appurtenances, the existing wells are to be removed. The existing well for the pump house is actually inside the building. You actually open the door to this lower section of the building and you actually see the pump. The well for this house or this residence is actually on a well pit. So it's on the ground and it's just one of those block well pits that houses that well. So as part of decommissioning it, we just have to remove those structures as we were planning to do. We just have to call them out. So those are the changes we've done. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Raul. Andrew or Mike, do you have anything to add?
Nothing for me. I thought it was excellent. Thanks, Raul.
Okay. All right, Jen?
Just a couple of things. Thank you for moving those panels and that fencing outside of that 100-foot buffer. Appreciate that effort. We just have a few little tweaks to like the planting plan and some of the notes that were on the plan. One of the concerning was you're going to be using fresh wood chips around, or you're going to be removing the trees and then shipping the trees on site and then attempting to use those shippings as part of the restoration plan. And after speaking with some people, they don't think that's such a great idea. They think that the chips need to be a little bit weathered more before they're used because of the nitrogen. So that was one question, and that might be conditioned. And then I know what you're saying about removing the turf grass, but your meadow mix isn't going to stand a chance if you try to plant it in the existing golf course turf. So that's something you might want to think about as well. Although I know why you're trying to, limit the disturbance, but that's something you should think about going forward, is if this meadow mix that you're proposing will actually survive if you just, plant it in the turf grass. And I think that was it. Oh, and Mark did find evidence of wood frog. I think it was wood frog, Alyssa. He'll be fine. He did find evidence of, wood frog egg masses, but that's not enough to currently certify a vernal pool. But he just wants that on the record as well when it goes to the Cape Cod Commission. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless Alyssa has anything to add.
Just to go off a couple more staff comments. Well, I'm sure you addressed this at the last meeting, but I just don't remember. The little green dots that are by Wetland C, are those just representative of restoration plantings going in, or do they mean something specific?
So yes, on the plan for conservation in conservation areas, yes, all of that is proposed to be either meadows or the plantings that we're proposing within 35-foot buffers. So we're not calling them mitigation plantings because the project as itself does not trigger mitigation. What we're calling this is restoration plantings. Currently it's fairways, open fairways.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is restoring specifically those areas closest to the resources, and then adding some meadows. And yes, there was a comment before from staff. There are some areas further outside of jurisdiction that are also being enhanced with native plants and shrubs and screenery. And that's because it is being triggered by other departments and other regulatory agencies such as the Cape Cod Commission and Planning Board. So there's going to be quite a bit of more vegetation that it's probably some 10 acres of plantings that's going to be happening here. But in conservation jurisdiction is about 2 acres.
Okay, thank you. And this was one of Mark's questions. Do you guys have a plan at the moment for how we're going to water everything and maintain everything? Because obviously that's a lot of plan.
So the applicant will rely on the contractors who are actually going to be doing the contract for the plantings, and their I guess their monitoring and reporting and replacement if any of them die. One of the things we cannot do is, because we have to decommission the wells, we cannot keep active wells on the site. They have to be decommissioned once the structures get abandoned. So we won't have the ability for irrigating or irrigation at the site. So it will be probably using some mulch. If we can't create the mulch with the trees or the leaves that are being removed from site, probably from off-site mulching to kind of keep that moisture within those plant areas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Courtney,
So you couldn't phase the removal of the wells to a latter stage of the project in order to be able to irrigate your mitigation plantings?
As soon as the arrays start going up, there cannot be any well within a certain perimeter of the array system. It's a stipulation in some of the regulations.
Okay.
So they cannot be operational.
And then I presume any cesspools or septic tanks associated with those buildings are going to be drained, pumped, filled, collapsed, and all that stuff. That's all part of it.
For Title V abandonment, yes.
Okay. No other questions.
thank you. All right, I appreciate you guys addressing all our issues and all the staff comments, and even taking that stuff out of the buffer zone to the vernal pooling question. So thank you for that. Peter.
I echo Jamie's accolades for rearranging the panels. No other comments.
Okay. Steve.
All right, I guess 2's enough, so thank you. No question.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a DEP number?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second, Bird second.
We have a motion and a second. Close the hearing. Are there any other comments or questions? Smart. All right, taking the vote. Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve,
Pat and I.
it is unanimous. We have closed the hearing. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Interesting about the wells, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, next up, continued hearings under an enforcement order. Leonard Bassett Jr. and Patricia Bassett, trustees, 465 Courier Road, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of trees within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we met with the property owners and their representative contractor that took the trees down on Monday. We had sensed there was some urgency on behalf of the older property owners that they wanted this restored as soon as possible. That is not the case right now. There's a number of elements going on this property. There's the violation. They want to construct kind of a more stable driveway area for just to store their boat. And they have a dock issue out there that we're trying to work through. So we've advised them to file a notice of intent and kind of encapture everything in one notice. They're in the process of retaining Falmouth Engineering to do the survey, but Falmouth Engineering's a couple of weeks out. So we're proposing to continue this until, I think, what did we say, Alyssa, July 13th, something around then.
Yeah.
So they can get the survey and the notice filed, and we can get them all permitted by the fall, and then they can plant everything they need to plant to fix the violation in the fall.
I'll make a motion to continue this until July 13th.
Gladfelter, second.
That sounds efficient. All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this till July 13th. Does anybody have any questions or comments? All right, we're going to call for the vote. Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat.
Harris, aye.
Peter.
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until July 13th. All right. Hey, Jen, I have a question. Go back to AMP. It's just a curious. They have 4 wells. They're talking about 2 that are in jurisdiction. Do they have to remove the other 2 as well? Also? No pun
I'm
intended.
assuming they do, because Raul made the statement that wells can't be within a certain radius of the solar panels.
Okay, but the only 2 he was concerned with are what's in our jurisdiction.
Because he wants us to make a finding that they're being decommissioned, so that there's an acknowledgement on our end that they're being decommissioned.
Got it. Didn't mean to go backwards, but
No, it's okay.
stuck with me for a second. All right. Next up are vote orders of conditions. First up, Heather
Could I ask
Campion.
Could I ask a
20
question, Jamie?
Sheridan. Sure, go ahead.
It's
I
about
wasn't
those
speaking or
wells.
anything.
Well, you brought up the wells.
Yeah,
So-
I did.
Jen, is there any way we could find out how much water was pumped annually from those wells?
To what end?
We're working on a water balance for the Coonamessett River.
Oh.
And this is groundwater that would presumably go into the pond.
I can see if we have the records for that. They probably have to report it to someone.
If we could have it and send it on to Nick Nelson.
Yeah, I can ask Raul to research that for me.
Okay, thanks. I'd appreciate that.
No problem.
Interesting. All right, anything further on wells?
Hold on.
Conditions, Heather Campion, 20 Sheridan Avenue, Falmouth, Mass.
This is the dock. It's just a rebuild. It's a complete rebuild of the existing dock. No time of year restrictions from DMF, nothing like that.
Oh, the dock off,
Hmm?
dock
No.
downtown, the dock by the harbor.
Yeah, the
Right.
dock in Falmouth and a harbor.
Sheridan.
Yep.
No special conditions.
Just your standard dock conditions. I don't think it really needs to be a special condition.
So I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
Our second.
Okay, and I skipped this step, but for the record, the quorum is all of us.
Correct.
That's what I show. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Clarence E. and Amy L. Korsgaard, trustees, the Korsgaard 2020 Realty Trust, 23 Dealey Lane, Falmouth, Mass. Again, the quorum is all of us.
Yes, the only comments that the staff had on this one that I don't think were fully addressed in the hearing is, remember they wanted to construct a little like fieldstone or bluestone patio with grass joints, and they were proposing to
Somebody mute themselves, the
they
belching.
were proposing to they were arguing for the swap because they had that older brick patio with the little cover. So that, I think that's a discussion point, that they were going to remove that, make that area lawn, and then reconstruct that patio area and attach it to the house. Everybody remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with this. It's switching the patio from one place to another.
I think that's what my notes say. It was a swap.
This was Tom Bunker, right?
Swap it.
And the new location's a little further back.
Right. Yeah, it's way further back. But they should also remove all the other patio and bricks, etc., down towards the marsh.
Agreed.
Yeah, there's a number of things down near the marsh that need to be removed.
Storage of junk.
So can we make a finding to that effect?
Yeah,
Perfect.
And condition that it be removed.
I just did.
Now, was this a proposed dog enclosure, a fence enclosure for a dog? I don't see it on the plan.
They're coming back
Come back for that.
Oh, okay.
All right, anything else? All right.
Melissa, was there anything else we had on this one?
Those were my only notes.
Yeah.
I know they wanted to make up for the.
Wait a minute, there was something about the deck.
Yeah, so they recognized there was an expansion and they wanted to plant some marsh elder and a couple other species in between that salt marsh and coastal bank area where that bench is. So they were going to augment the proposed.
Did we get a revised plan from Tom on that one? Oh, yes.
I didn't see anything. Unless you did.
Okay, we'll look. So they need to plant. Okay.
All right, anyone?
Move to issue an order as discussed.
Harris, second.
No creeping juniper. They had proposed creeping juniper, no creeping juniper. We'll pick something else for them. It's more of a ground cover. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Is there anything else? All right. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Catherine Kafalis, 389 Shorewood Drive, Falmouth, Mass. Again, quorums, all of us.
Yep.
This was the proposed second floor addition, the reconfiguration of some walkways, and the reconfiguration of a driveway. Proposed roof, proposed second floor, and then a little kind of addition in the front. And they were going to put the proposed mitigation in the corner, and I think, do we have some discussion about a tree?
Yes.
Yep. They're removing 3 trees and they're only proposing 1.
I think we decided at the end of the hearing 4 trees. 3 removed, 4 being planted.
Okay. Perfect. Anything else? All right.
I'll make a motion to accept this, to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird, second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to issue, excuse me, an order of conditions as discussed. If there's nothing else. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Edward Eskandarian, 11 Tonsett Road, North Falmouth, Mass. Quorum's everyone.
I have a note that you wanted the vegetation to be more, for lack of a better term, clumped together, as opposed to having it just run in the skinny little thing around the property. And then you had that sheer fencing in the that new paneling of fencing in the velocity zone.
And to remove it. I thought there was discussion about removing it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's there. So does the board want it removed?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And the plants that exist need to be allowed to grow to mature height.
Yep.
No cutting.
And that's it.
Anything else? All right.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing else. All right. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
Brian, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. It's the first time in a long time we've had as many order of conditions as NOIs. All right, Jason Sanatellis, 285 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Mass.
The quorum doesn't include Kevin.
All right.
Good.
Don't go away, Kevin.
This is the raise and rebuild, and we had him shift the deck. I believe it's north. Yeah. It's the raise and rebuild mitigation.
My note says 47 foot set off from the resource. He was gonna move it, so it was 47 feet.
Yes, he did. He
Okay.
shifted it. Okay. This is a fairly straightforward one.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Just have to fix that location of that deck. Let's see, do I have my revision dates on here?
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Harris, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Is there anything else? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Paul Doucette, 334 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass.
This is a septic upgrade, proposed 1,000 gallon 2 compartment septic tank. Proposing a paved driveway, so they're kind of reconfiguring the driveway a bit. And then they wanted to permit the shed, and that generated some discussion with the board.
Because the shed's in the velocity zone.
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah.
They didn't want to put it on the other side because it was going to basically block the neighbor. I think block the view of the water from people walking on the roads and all. I think that's where their egress is to the house. So it would have been right there. There's no other place in the property to put this that's not in the velocity zone unless they're putting it right in the front yard, and they'd have to go for a special permit from zoning to do that.
Well, they could put it on that left side. They don't want to, but they could.
Yeah, they could. They comply with setback, zoning setback on the left side. They just don't want to put it there, like Jamie said.
Right.
The property's at a strange angle and it makes that more complicated.
Yep. I don't really have a problem with the shed there. The problem is, man, I hate to even say this out loud, but it's the precedent that we can start because everybody's going to want it.
Yeah.
I don't see how we allow a shed in the velocity zone.
No,
You don't.
We can.
Yeah.
I mean, they have an option to go to the zoning board of appeals. That's what they should do.
They don't even need it to put it on the left side.
No, I know, but if they want to put it where they'd like to put it.
Right.
Oh, all right. Put it on the right side and get a variance. Get it.
Because they could have an argument there because of that angle of the house. I mean, so they could possibly, I mean, it seems to me they would have a successful argument, but I don't know. I'm opposed to the shed just because of that.
I am as well.
We just had a series of projects where we made people take fences down.
Right. All right. So Dan, do you think we can make a finding for that? To not allow the shed part?
I mean, it's written in your regulations. It's clear as day in the regulations that you don't, have them right in front of me. Where do I have them?
No new
Oh,
structures in
get
the
it.
velocity zone.
It says sheer walls such as buildings and sheds and things. So I know it says the word shed. So
Says
I
structures,
I could make that, I can make a finding, and if the board does not want to allow the shed, then we can make a special condition that it has to be removed. Because there is one there that they put up that they didn't realize they needed a permit for. So
Right.
the proposed shed can't be, placed where they want it, and then we'd have to come back and do an enforcement order to remove the shed that's there. But that's doable. And then maybe I can talk to George and convince him to go to the zoning board of appeals.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
So make a motion, issue order of conditions as discussed and including the discussion of the shed.
Sarah, second.
So I just want to be clear, we're asking them or telling them they have to remove the shed in the velocity zone. Is that part of the condition?
Well,
No.
Courtney, there's two issues with the shed. There's an existing shed there, and then they have a proposed shed that's a little larger than the existing shed because they're trying to do the right thing and permit it. In an area that you guys are not thrilled with. So don't allow the proposed shed is what I'm hearing the board say. And then to follow up on that, we're gonna have to come back to a new hearing and have them remove the existing shed. And you're
Yeah, just condition it to that.
like this, and I'm going down the right path when I say that.
Yeah, it's an
In other
enforcement.
words, we can't just condition that they remove the existing shed in the velocity zone. Do we have to issue an enforcement order?
Well, in the past, we've always issued enforcement orders because there's a procedure within the regulations for
Okay.
enforcement.
No.
But I hear what you're saying, Courtney, because I'm thinking immediately of all the fences. We're telling people, get rid of your fences, so.
Yeah, I mean, I can, have them remove the other shed before they start the septic and driveway
Right.
construction.
That actually makes sense. I think Courtney's making some sense here too.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, don't you?
I like a one-step process as opposed to a two-step process.
Right, it's less hassle for them. And it also, if they challenge our not following the correct procedure, so we'll just do an enforcement hearing.
Okay.
Okay. So everybody's clear?
Mm-hmm.
We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed, which includes not allowing a new shed in the velocity zone. So if there's nothing further, all right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Pat,
Our side.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. And just a reminder, there is no meeting next week. So thank you all for your dedication. Enjoy the night off. Free beer at Courtney's house. No, wait,
Yeah,
that was on the record. Hey,
here we go.
all right. Last motion and second.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Gladfelter, aye.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye.
O'Brien, aye.
Harris side.
Walsh, aye.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.